Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Morning Coffees with James. I'm James, and this is my morning coffee. Oh, good gracious, I love coffee. How y'all doing today? What does this purple haze taste like? It tastes kind of like a root beer. Oh, it doesn't look purple, so it's not lean. So what are we talking about today? Well, I don't know. I want to talk about something that's been kind of like on my mind recently, and this is something I've been watching a lot of my favorite YouTubers, the nerd culture stuff like that, Nerdrotic, and Critical Drinker. I was listening to Critical Drinker, and he was talking about the superhero fatigue that everybody's getting, and honestly, I agree with him. I think there is a superhero fatigue going on right about now. But I don't think it's in the same vein as, like, say, oh, we're just tired of seeing superheroes. I think it's in the same vein. I have to agree with this a little bit, but it's in the same vein of, why am I not centered? There we go. Of not really, we're sick and tired of superheroes, but we are kind of done with this whole political correctness and whole SJW nonsense. And the fact that fun is now dying, the fact that people are not having any fun anymore, and the fact that we've seen so many versions of certain superheroes. Like, example would be Batman. I think a lot of people have seen the same kind of Batman movie already, where it's dark and gritty. I mean, the new Batman movie, I was like, I looked at that and I was like, this kind of reminds me of Nolan's Batman movie. Like, I have not seen the movie, and I know people say, "Oh, how could you judge it if you haven't seen it?" Well, first of all, I've seen this movie when it was called The Dark Knight. I've seen this movie when it was called Batman Begins. I mean, it looks like one of the Nolan movies. You can say, well, it's completely different. Kind of, but it also kind of looks like another retread of that realistic take on Batman, which we've seen multiple times. And it's funny because there's a lot of missed opportunity. Like, I have to agree with the Critical Drinker and the Young Rippa and the people talking about this. There has been a lot of missed opportunities when it comes to superhero films. I mean, we could have had, like, look, I don't care what you, depending on what your thoughts on Snyder's universe of the DCU, I think he was banking on that. I think he was going in a different direction that people needed and had to have. This idea that we don't need another MCU type movie. I mean, look at Josh Whedon in the Justice League versus Zack Snyder. I have not seen the Zack Snyder cut yet of Justice League, but I'm damn well want to see it because I'm a supporter of Zack Snyder, and I know people out there are being like, "Oh my God, he's a bad filmmaker." No, he's a good filmmaker. He just needs the right people to help him out. I mean, if you look at the movie Watchmen, he had David Hayter helping him. My problem is that David S. Goyer comes along and tries to write something, and it's like, you motherfucker, you failed. This is not. If anybody in anything, it's like, don't blame just one person for a movie failing. There are other people behind the scenes. I mean, execs, writers, producers, people who just make poor decisions to make a buck in a movie. Like, granted, people want to make money off their movies, but, like, let's be honest. If the movie's not good, it's not good. And it's like any kind of fine wine. You can't just make cheese. You can't make a fine wine. Like, movies are kind of like wine. You know, in the beginning it's gonna taste like, you think it's gonna taste great in the beginning. It's like, oh my God, this tastes good. But then later when it ages, it's like it just gets sour and tastes awful. And, like, that could be said for, like, movies that didn't do well in the beginning, like John Carpenter's The Thing. That is aged wine, perfect. Same thing with Joel Schumacher's Batman movies. I think they've aged perfectly, along with Tim Burton's, because yes, they're a product of the time, but they're also a product of good film, like just fun and Batman movies. There's nothing serious. There's no culture. That's another thing too. You got too much of this, like, political correctness. You got some of the social commentary in there. You got too much of this, SJW nonsense. Bugs Bunny rah rah nonsense. And I'm sorry, but I'm tired of politics. I think on both sides of the spectrum. On both sides of the spectrum. Yes, do I follow politics a lot? Yes, but I'm sorry to say it, but I'm just done with it. So, with that being said, you also got Batman Begin. Well, you know, I think just people are not tired. Like, I think people are getting sick of superheroes, but I think they're also getting sick of the political correctness messaging and, you know, socialism messaging and, you know, the propaganda that's being pushed in these movies. You know what I mean? Like, hell, even Razorfist talked about this, and then again, he likes The Shadow. Now, granted, I think The Shadow is fucking awesome. Like, listening to that man talk about The Shadow, you start to realize The Shadow is not 1940s, 1930s Punisher. He is basically the way he basically described it, he is evil set upon evil. You know, he's a villain who's set upon other villains. So it's kind of an interesting aspect of it, because the way he describes, like, and even like the way he's describing it too, like The Shadow is, you know, the way he looks, he's very, you know, pointy face, and the features of his face very narrow and all that stuff. Though he dresses in black, and he's a schemer, he's a deceiver, he's someone who works in the shadow. I mean, God, his name is The Shadow. Carl Jung is like, see, Carl Jung is pointing at it going, there he is. He has agents. You know, you make a blood oath to this man. You know, he doesn't just shoot. You know, he shoots thugs, but like when it comes to the main villains, he orchestrates a death for them that's, you know, justifiable and perfect. You know, if there is a poisoner, he poisons the poisoner. You know, the example would be the Voodoo Master, who uses this red room to hypnotize people. The Shadow dressed up in all red to fuck with this dude and put him in this room to fuck with him. You know, it's that kind of shit, that kind of thing. So, like, the Punisher would just blow the dude up or just shoot him. That's it. You know, and again, the Punisher is not a bad character. It's just not, you know, he's not the Shadow. The Shadow is a different beast altogether. But overall, I think, again, he's right. There is a superhero fatigue, and yes, they're going to change him to the new thing. But the problem is that, yeah, you're going to change him to the new thing, but it's going to be more of the same political correctness, political this, political... And especially, you see it now, I see it more now with, like, video games. It's like, you know, what was the guy's name? The guy who made the first God of War game, and then he has his channel, and he was talking about this. You know, I made a schlock film in a video game format. It's like, motherfucker, that whole industry is made up on schlock. You know, nobody gave a shit about video games until somebody it became mainstream, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've got like these and this is the thing. People stop censoring shit. Yes, yes, you have sexy women in them. Yes, you have, you know, ultra gore in it. But that doesn't mean there's no substance to what's in it. Yes, it's a video game, and it should be allowed to be told like a video game. It's not real. It's fantasy. But yet you're like, well, this is offending people. Like, stop being you're not a hero, all right? You're not a superhero. You're not some crusader for justice. You're just some fat slob living in his mom's bed. Yeah, I should vouch for this because I'm living it with my parents. But you're just some dude in somebody's basement, Twitter, texting with obesity because you're offended. You're not even offended. You're just insecure about somebody looking much more better than you, and you would rather have some company in your swollen misery. And it's annoying. I'm sorry to say it, but it's one of the problems I have with entertainment, and the fact that video games are treating its audience like dummies. Like, I mean, a great example of this, and I'm not alone on this, the new Resident Evil games. From Resident Evil 7 all the way to the new Resident Evil 8, treats its fucking audience like fucking morons. Capcom has not learned shit from Resident Evil 7. And you know what? I'm going to say it up front. I don't think Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 ruined the game franchise. No, I don't. I'm tired of people saying it's not. It does. It did. Because you know what? At least it stuck to its guns. At least it was knowing it was super over the top. And hell, if you've read the novelizations of the games, one of them, the second one, it's Caribbean Cove, I think it is, where Rebecca's going to Maine in the Umbrella facility. There are zombies with machine guns. Oh, you mean like how there was in Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6? Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, it's lost the survival horror roots. It's not scary anymore. Oh my god. Oh, fuck off. Excuse me, but this is my problem. It's people who've not read the novelizations, or who are like I'm sorry to say, but I don't mind a no horror in those games. Okay, fine. The absence of horror doesn't make it bad. I'm sorry to say it, folks, but you kind of ruined Resident Evil with your bullshit. Not the casuals, but people just sucking the dick of this whole, it needs to be scary. You know, it's not Silent Hill. At least Resident Evil can kind of like shake that off and just be action. And you know what? Something Resident Evil 4 scares has some scary ass moments in it. It's still a horror game. You want to know why? Chainsaw guy, the Granados with, the blind Granados. The music, it's still tense. It's still fucking tense. Regenerators, the thing that looks like a goddamn xenomorph. There are some scary moments in those games. And then you get to Resident Evil 5 and 6, yeah, and it loses its horror elements. But it's still fun. I'm sorry to say it, folks. It's still fucking fun. Kiss my ass. And then, now we have a Resident Evil that has the problem. My biggest issue with modern gaming and modern movies and modern anything is realism equals good. Because thanks to the fucking Nolan series, we can't have any fantastical elements anymore because realism is so much better. It's like, fuck off. Just fuck off. So fucking sick of that shit. It just fucking irritates the crap out of me. And this is the thing too that really bothers me. Nobody's really pointing out what really killed Resident Evil. What really killed it. And I'm sorry to say it, but I don't like the game series whatsoever. And the fact that people were surprised when it turned into an action shooter. Dead Space. Dead Space has always been an action shooter. Like, I've played that game, and I got bored of it because it was the same shit over and over again. Same goddamn thing. Running around on a spaceship, shooting monsters, loud noises, flashing lights. It's just like, this is the one thing I agree with Yahtzee on. And this is something I have to say. Dead Space is an action shooter. It's an action horror game. If you really want to know what killed Resident Evil, that's what killed Resident Evil. That's what killed Resident Evil. No, and don't give me the bullshit of, well, Resident Evil 4 was just, ruin the franchise and ruin survival horror. Because you could have gone any direction with it. You could have learned from that game and said, okay, how do we still maintain the survival horror aspect of this? And I'm just so baffled by people with this nonsense. It's like, hey, guys, let's be honest. You ruined survival horror game when you just fucking suck the dick of fucking Dead Space. Dead Space is overrated. I'm sorry to say it ruined survival horror. It's an overrated piece of shit game. Oh my god, it's so really? Oh, so lighting and I'm sorry, I'm not amused with the flashing lights and all that nonsense. And don't get me started with, oh, you must like Amnesia. No, I don't. I think that's another piece of shit survival horror game as well. I'm sorry, but being chased by a goofy-looking monster doesn't make it scary. What about the lighting and all this sound effect? I'm sorry, did you ever heard of Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem? Have you ever heard of that game? No, you fucking casuals? Kiss my ass. Oh, hell, Alone in the Dark. And then you all bitched and moaned about the tank controls. Hey, here's an idea. If you don't like to play the game, don't play it. And I'm gonna be honest too, with that being said, it's like, I'm just so fucking done with these fucking people who play these games and then complain about how survival horror is not scary anymore. Well, maybe you shouldn't have played Dead Space. I thought it was gonna be cool, but it doesn't have like what the classic Resident Evils have. A slow-paced, slow-burn survival horror game, which, by the way, is a survival horror game. Because it's item management, it's, resource management, you have limited resources, you have to figure out, there's puzzle solving, you have to evade monsters that could just rip you apart. Modern survival horror games just don't have that anymore. And the fact that the new Resident Evil games don't have giant fucking spiders in it anymore. Where are the giant spiders? In fact, where are the giant, insects? I'm sorry, but when did insects and giant arachnids stop being scary? Like, I was so hyped when the new Resident Evil 2 remake was coming out. Excuse me, not remake, reimagined, because I was like, oh my god, we're gonna get some scary fucking, we're gonna get photorealistic spiders. Like in Resident Evil 1. The remake of Resident Evil 1. That fucking remake was beautiful. But no, we got this generic haunted house hayride nonsense. Yeah, you got some spooks, but after like playing it a couple of times, it gets boring. And don't get me started with Mr. X in that game, who just appears like some. Which, by the way, the design of Mr. X, and I'm sorry to say it, is not interesting. It's stupid. They gave him a little fedora hat. No, but in the original cut of the game, he wore a fedora. That doesn't make it any better, folks. That does not make it any fucking better. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. The original design of Mr. X, I liked it because it looked like he was a weapon. Like, this guy looked industrial, looked like he was manufactured to be a BOW, a weapon that you sent in to fuck people up. This Mr. X, I'm sorry, but I don't buy the fact that his little fedora is gonna keep him in disguise with this trench coat. I mean, like, what, did Hugo Boss make the fucking outfit? No, I'm sorry, but no. The remake of Resident Evil is just absolutely stupid. And especially with Resident Evil 3, which pointed out more flaws with that fucking game series too. Like, with those new remakes. Because they're stupid. I'm sorry, but it's stupid. It just bugs the shit out of me that people are just so, like, honeysuckle about that game. And then you wonder why they don't do the same thing with Resident Evil 8. Well, why is Resident Evil 8 so bad? Maybe it's because you just sucked on that teat for a long time. You begged Capcom, and then you didn't, like, hit them when you're all so nervous about not getting your free shit that you decided to be like, well, it's like, no. I'll bite the hand. In fact, I won't bite the hand that feeds me. I'm gonna tear off the arm and go for the throat. Capcom, like, realism is just does not equal a good game. I'm so tired of this bullshit. This is why we have so many of these boring, like, games out there, like God of War, The Last of Us, and The Last of Us 2. Every game where it's an open world game where there has to be a lengthy walking simulation. Look, I'm sorry, but if Roger Ebert, I'm sorry if the boomers don't think video games are art. Fuck them. They're gonna die off anyways, so who gives a shit? Who cares what they think? If my generation and the younger generation and maybe Generation X thinks video games is art, I'm okay with it. The older generation can kiss my ass when it comes to that nonsense. It can kiss my ass. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm trying to keep my culture alive. I mean, doing example would be the original Resident Evil 2, and in fact, most of the original Resident Evil games, and any survival horror game, you felt like you were in an abandoned place versus, going into a haunted house. A haunted house is an attraction. You go into it once, and you know where the spooks are going to be. An abandoned place keeps you on edge because you really don't know what's behind door number 1. It's scary. I think it's scarier, and I think people have forgotten that. They've forgotten the sense of fear in those games. They're just linear, like, experiences, like, extremely linear. And I mean, not to say the games were linear, but they let you explore a little bit in a place that seemed dangerous. Like, it made you feel like the danger was real in those places. It wasn't this, like, cookie-cutter bullshit. God damn it, it just pisses me off. It just pisses me off to no fucking end. And I hope people out there can understand this. I know most of my viewers don't, like, on Instagram, but are not gamers, but maybe you can understand this. It's like, how would I put it? It's like any remake would be an example of this. Like, you watch the first movie and it has that, like, quality in there. And, granted, like, and here's an example. People don't understand how remakes work. You don't remove a lot more things, you add. And I'm going to use the Resident Evil remake as an example of that. They added more to that game. more better designed graphics. You added more detail to the environments. The music became much more better. The sound design became much more better. The overall look and the feel, the aesthetics felt much more better and alive. You added more enemy types. You added Lisa Trevor. You added Crimson Heads. When a zombie's down and you leave it there, it's gonna come back as a Crimson Head. You added more environments, more puzzles. You add rather than subtracting. And this is why I'm not calling the Resident Evil remakes, and I'm tired of people calling them remakes. They're reimagines. So fuck off with that nonsense. Alright, I think I've spoke long enough. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care, love you, bye-bye, and remember to stay awesome. Peace.